Welcome back, Irish fans, to Breaking Out Bray's Boys podcast. It's finally NBA draft season again. The NBA draft order is set. It's combine week, and Notre Dame finally has some skin in the game here. They haven't in past years. Since I've covered the team, certainly haven't. John Mooney was a guy who was kind of maybe a fringe second-round pick, but didn't really have the opportunity to go to the combine or the G League invitational to get his name out there. Ended up going overseas, obviously, Jawan Durham. Kind of the same, but he was even less highly regarded than John Mooney was. Notre Dame finally, though, has a guy who is a projected first-round pick, could maybe sneak his way into the back end of the lottery or around that area, but Blake Wesley is a guy who is pretty much a consensus projected first-round pick. At the very least, a guy who is going to get drafted and is going to be the first one and done under Mike Brey. So certainly a significant time for Notre Dame, and going to kind of break down Wesley as a prospect, what he has going for him, why he kind of stands out from the guys at Notre Dame, which some of them are obvious, some of them are not super obvious why he stands out against the field, and why people think he could be a really good NBA player one day. But then also what he needs to improve and what he needs to work through over the next year or two to become an effective NBA player. So kind of going to dive into it. First, going to look at his combine numbers. Don't have all the tests yet. This is filmed before all his tests are done, but measuring at 6'4" for his height, 6'9" for his wingspan, 8'7" standing reach, and weighed in at 187.2 pounds. When he got to Notre Dame, he said that he weighed 175 pounds. So certainly some muscle put on by Blake in the last year, around 12 pounds. Just of muscle, and that's certainly going to help him. He's put an emphasis on that to improve his finishing. A little bit of time last year where he would get kind of swept up at the rim or just have trouble finishing through contact in general, and I think that's a area of emphasis Blake would want to improve throughout this pre-draft process, and it certainly looks like he has tried to do that. We do have one testing number. Tom Noy said that Blake had a 36-inch vertical leap at the combine, so pretty above average testing for Blake Wesley, which is certainly good for him and his stock, considering he won't be playing in the 5-on-5 this week, which is why I felt comfortable filming this now. Won't see much of him over the next few days, just going to be some individual drills and testing. But Blake, although he doesn't have the opportunity to show out at the combine in the 5v5 sense, he is a guy who, based on today and based on just what we know of him, has NBA size, has NBA athleticism. And those are two things that a lot of guys throughout college who are really talented, guys like Devon Dotson, Marcus Howard, guys who look to be incredible college players, even guards who were incredible college players, just didn't really end up translating to the NBA as much because they didn't have NBA size, NBA athleticism. Blake, obviously, as a 6'4" guard with a 6'9" wingspan, is going to stand out in that regard, or at least be average in that regard. And that's something that NBA teams are going to love. They're going to take a chance on him because of just that. Maybe not just that as a guard, but they're going to take a chance on him, not in spite of those. Those are definitely going to help him. And what also helps him is his decision to come to Notre Dame in a sense. He played in an offense where we were able to see his full skill set, not an offense where it's predicated on off-ball movement and predicated on kind of working within the system. Blake Wesley was the system at times this year. We saw that at the end of the March Madness game when Notre Dame lived and died on him and ended up dying on him. But throughout the year, they lived on him, and NBA teams obviously are going to like that. We were able to see an offense with him being able to with Mike Brey putting him in spots where he would be in the NBA rather than just a Bellarmine-type offense, Princeton-type offense where it's just all moving and cutting and working off the ball. Blake Wesley was featured in a role where at times he was the primary ball handler. He could work out of pick and rolls. He could work downhill in isolation, and that's something that is really going to benefit him. Just that free-flowing offense where it's not quite an NBA offense, but the floor's opened up, and he's put in situations he's going to be put in the NBA. And we were able to see some of his playmaking throughout the year. Blake Wesley emerged more and more as a playmaker, early in the year, it was just Prentice Hub kind of running the show. And then as we kind of went on, Blake Wesley started becoming more and more of that secondary ball handler and even mixing into the primary ball handler role a little bit. Notre Dame's going to miss not only Prentice Hub having his point guard skills, but Blake Wesley's playmaking as well. The turnovers were a little bit of an issue, and playing out of control at times is something I think they're going to need to work on, obviously, like the Texas Tech game, but playmaking is something I'd like to think of as a strength going into the draft process for Blake Wesley. I think he's shown flashes of incredible playmaking throughout the pick and rolls. I think he was a really good playmaker. And then just going downhill and finding guys in the corner or finding Paul Atkinson on the dunker's post, I think Blake really showed his vision and kind of his ability to see the floor at a high level this year. Obviously, it wasn't perfect. He's a freshman who averaged 2.2 turnovers per game, while also having another ball handler beside him. Also was a little bit of a higher volume shooter than I think a lot of people would like, especially going downhill. I think he's out of control a little bit at times, but the playmaking flashes are there, and that's really what matters in terms of that. You don't have to be a perfect playmaker going to the NBA. The floor is going to be a lot more open, and there's coaches who can help to develop decision-making. That also repetition helps that. His trainers are going to work with him on that. And we saw Jaden Ivey's playmaking ability and decision-making improve a lot year to year. And I'd like to think that people can help Blake do the same thing. But the main thing with Blake, obviously, is his scoring. A guy who has potential to be a three-level scorer in the NBA. The jump shot's still a work in progress. He's still working on finishing around the rim. That was a little erratic at times, but man, if he can put it all together as a jump shooter and a guy who, once he gets to the rim, which we already know he can do, then he's a really effective NBA scorer and a guy who can be at least a viable option on a team, depending on how much he hones in on those things. But Blake's a guy who can already make moves to get by guys. He's already physical enough to kind of put his shoulder into a guy. All he has to do now is be able to finish it and be able to hit shots at a high level from beyond the arc. He shot 30% from three this year. I think people think of it as a little bit worse than that just because it was so streaky at times and he took so many attempts. But 30% I think is going to need to be improved on, but there's a start. It's not like he is a complete lost cause in terms of shooting, but it's going to need to improve. And if all goes well, he's a high-level three-level scorer. And if not, he's just a guy who's going to be able to make moves in isolation and going downhill, but isn't going to quite be able to be as effective as he otherwise would be. I think Blake Wesley's offensive ceiling is incredibly high just because of the playmaking ability he flashed and the scoring ability he obviously flashed as well. There's games like Louisville where he looked like a complete pro. UNC, I think, was one of those games also. Kentucky at times was one of those. But then there's games like Texas Tech at the end where almost just throws away the game because of just not being able to consistently put it together offensively. He's making his move, getting to his spot, just not being able to finish. And to be effective in the NBA, you have to be able to play at your own pace. You have to be able to slow down and just be more under control. And I think we talked about this for a while with Blake Wesley. If he can consistently do that, it's going to help him in a lot of areas, and he's going to be a really effective offensive player if that can happen. Moving on to his defense, obviously we've seen the flashes of being able to force turnovers, and NBA teams, I'm sure, love that. He's a guy who can really get in the passing lanes, get out in transition, and make a finish. One of the best transition players I've seen at Notre Dame. I like to kind of use the word with his defense. I'd like to talk about kind of practical athleticism. Notre Dame's had a lot of really good athletes over the years and guys who, if you watch them in an empty gym, you would think they're incredible athletes, but then you watch them play in regular season games and it's not quite as good as what we've seen in an open gym. But Blake Wesley almost seems more athletic in game than he does in open gym. It's a lot of practical athleticism that he's using to get in passing lanes, using to defend at a high level, and obviously his length plays into that as well. but the way he's able to finish, the way he's able to blow by his guy with an explosive move. It's a guy who has a lot of not only athleticism, but athleticism that he knows how to use at a high level. And I think that's really valuable for his NBA profile. And defensively, that plays into it as well. I mean, the length and athleticism that he has, I think Anthony Solomon helped him to tap into a little bit this year. And I think the sky is the limit defensively for Blake Wesley. Obviously, he's not a 6'7" defensive freak like Scotty Barnes or Pascal Siakam, but he is a guy who I think could be a really high-level defender with a little bit of technical work and a little bit of just buying in. And I do think NBA, obviously he's going to get scored on more because there's more talented shot makers, but I think he's more of an NBA-level defender than a college defender. What I mean by that is I don't think he's as good of an off-ball movement defender. I think he's more of a isolation kind of defender. He's going to have to learn to work over pick and rolls a little bit better and kind of stay with his guy. But I do think he's more of a one-on-one defender rather than a team defender. And I think we saw that this year. Just kind of, I think he's much more engaged, and I think his skill set plays more just being in that kind of situation. He'll be in that more in the NBA without all the college schemes he's going to have to face. And I think what will get him on the floor, even if he's not fully developed offensively, I'm going to talk about where he needs to improve there. What he's going to need to kind of carry him onto the floor early is his defense and just his kind of build and athleticism. That's going to get him on the floor. And I do think that will happen. I think maybe in this first or second year, he's not a finished product offensively. Most rookies aren't. Maybe he'll be behind the curve a little bit even, but the defensive ceiling and what he can do for you defensively in terms of just being disruptive and just using that length and athleticism, I think can get him on the floor. Moving on to what Blake kind of needs to improve. Number one, maybe not the most important one, but what I've kind of harped on for a while, just being a little more under control at times. You saw a guy like Cade Cunningham last year was the first overall pick because he was able to just kind of run his own race, be steady. No one was able to speed him up. When he got to the rim, he was able to finish and knew what he wanted to do with it every time. Blake Wesley, I think, gets caught in bad spots sometimes offensively, attacks a little more than he should at times. And even with the opened up floor and everything like that, I think made a few too many bad decisions around the rim. I think that'll be masked by his improved finishing, but it's going to be hard to improve finishing around NBA level bigs. And playing under control can help him show more of that playmaking, help him make better decisions. Every part of his game gets better if he plays more under control. And you don't want him to kind of lose some of that nature because that's what allows him to get to the rim and allows him to make those highlight plays around the rim. But you also don't want him to be erratic like a guy like Prentice Hub was throughout his career at times. You want him to kind of be a mix. And I thought he was really good at that throughout the year at times. And then throughout the year, like the end of the Texas Tech game, I hate to use that as a example, but just kind of wasn't that. Alabama was a good example of kind of a mix. He would go to the rim with his hair on fire and then would actually finish it. And when he didn't finish it, you could tell what he was trying to do there. And then in a game like Texas Tech, he's going to the rim, kind of just throwing it at the rim. And I do like his potential to kind of have that balance and to play under control. We've seen him play off 2 feet really well at times. And I think he does have some craftiness around the rim, just kind of tap into it. And he's really put an emphasis on that in the pre-draft, just finishing around the rim, finishing through contact. And obviously the improved muscle is going to help him there. And just more experience playing high-level basketball is going to help him do that. In college, a lot of the lane was crowded, but now floor is going to be opened up, and he's going to have to finish over guys. And I think obviously he's put a big emphasis on that in the offseason. Shooting's another thing he's put a big emphasis on. Just not only was the results shooting not throughout the college season, not that consistent. The form wasn't all that consistent either. And I think that's something that he's really got to improve as well. Just getting a consistent stroke and taking his time, slowing down, going through his motion every time is really going to help him just to shoot a higher percentage and to not go through the type of slump he went shooting this year. Shot like 26% through like late February, like early February to mid-March, I think was the time frame on that. But if he can kind of get down his form a little bit, the shooting will come and the woes will start to go away a little bit. The line moving back, I don't think helps him that much. I think his release is kind of tough to move back. I don't know if his range is quite as much as a guy like Prentice Hub or Cormac Ryan, but I do think a consistent shooting form, which he certainly is working on this offseason, is really going to help him. And then the last thing, the big emphasis point, I think, in addition to those, is just consistently locking in defensively. Like I said earlier, I think he's going to do that more in the NBA because that's what's going to have to get him on the floor early. And it's also a better situation for him in the NBA, I think. Just more of on-ball defending, more of just running around pick and rolls where he's going to have to be locked in to be an effective defender rather than there's some downtime in college where they're just kind of swinging the ball around. I think maybe he had a little trouble with that, but tonight, it's talking like it was a game recap, but in the NBA, I think is going to have a better time defending. And obviously he's going to be preached. You got to lock in defensively. But overall, there's a reason Blake Wesley is going to be a first-round pick in all likelihood. If he's not, he's probably going to be an early second-rounder. I wouldn't guess that he would really slip that much unless the interviews went awful or the combine goes awful or they didn't like that he didn't test or he didn't play. But overall, Blake Wesley is a guy who is going to really help Notre Dame in terms of just showing recruits like this guy wasn't a top 100 prospect. We saw something in him. We got him here, and look what he did for us. He didn't have that many big-time offers. Purdue didn't even keep a scholarship open for him, and look what he did throughout his year at Notre Dame. Now he's going to be a one-and-done. I've already started to preach that. I remember Curtis Williams Jr., class 2023 prospect, top 50 player, commented on Notre Dame's success with Blake Wesley. So Blake Wesley being a first-round pick is significant for Notre Dame, and even if you didn't think he was ready, obviously he still has things to improve on, but him being a first-round pick is huge for Notre Dame, especially if he can hit it big in the NBA. So thank you guys for watching. I'll be back, I'm sure, to talk about him at least one more time after he's drafted, and obviously going to be monitoring Notre Dame's big man situation over the next few weeks. Nate Laszewski has till June 1st to decide, and then Notre Dame's got to figure out what they want to do with the transfer. Do you get one? Do you roll with junior year Matt Zona and then two freshmen? Or do you get a freshman or get the two freshmen, Zona, Nate, and then try to get a transfer big? Going to be really interesting to see how that fits and what the staff decides to do over the next few months. And also going to be diving into 2023 recruiting once they get back on the circuit. Notre Dame threw out some big-time offers. It'll be really interesting to follow those recruitments. And just stay tuned for more Notre Dame basketball news. Going to try to get some interviews lined up soon. And I appreciate all the support throughout the season. Let me know what you think about Blake Wesley as an NBA prospect in the comments. And peace.